Hello, and thank you for listening to AI Success Factors podcast. We help enterprise adopt artificial intelligence. This is Samuel Matthew, your host. In simple terms, AI adoption is a three-step process: identifying the right AI opportunity, tying it back to a business value, and aligning it to a business goal. If you're a leader, needs help demonstrating ROI on your existing AI initiatives, or want to get a buy-in for a new AI initiative, you are in the right place. Our mission is to empower enterprise leaders to navigate, transform, and lead by applying AI into their business. In this show, we interview analytical and business leaders who successfully implemented AI into their business. In the conversations we feature, you will learn how these companies reach strategic business goals. It's a pleasure and privilege for our listeners to develop a point of view from the insights shared in this podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Matthew Clapp, a seasoned data and analytics executive with deep expertise in AI integration, enterprise data strategy, and organizational transformation in healthcare. Most recently, he served as a vice president of data and analytics at McKesson, where he led enterprise analytics and created data products across a multi-billion-dollar technology portfolio. His leadership has spanned roles at Humana, US Military, Deloitte, Beckman Coulter, where he guided analytics, governance, and large-scale transformation in highly regulated environments. Matthew holds Masters in Business Analytics from NYU Stern and completed executive programs at Harvard, MIT Sloan, and London School of Economics, bringing a rare blend of strategic, technical, and leadership expertise. Before we dive in, I want to note that the views Matthew shares in today's conversation are entirely his own. They do not represent McKesson or any of his prior employers or their leadership. We're grateful to have his personal perspective here, drawn from years of experience leading data and analytics in healthcare. In this episode, we dive into how AI and advanced analytics are transforming the healthcare distribution and service industry. We will explore why the patient journey from prescription to therapy is such a critical focus, how executives can overcome adoption hurdles, and what the future holds with emerging technologies like Gen AI and agentic AI. This is a conversation packed with insights for enterprise leaders, CXOs, and practitioners navigating the intersection of data, AI, and healthcare transformation. Here is our conversation. Hey, Matthew, welcome to AI Success Factors podcast.
Hey, Samuel, really appreciate you having me. I've seen some of the previous speakers and they're pretty amazing. I will try to live up to the expectation.
Absolutely. Hey, Matthew, for most of us outside healthcare and pharmaceutical world, it's hard to fully grasp how complex the ecosystem really is. On the surface, it seems straightforward. It starts with a patient and ends with a patient. When I get sick, I go to the doctor, show my insurance card, get treated. On my way back home, I pick up medicine from the pharmacy. But behind that simple experience, this incredibly intricate system, providers, payers, pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, all operating with their own priorities and constraints. To set the stage, could you walk us through what is actually taken to keep the pharmaceutical distribution running smoothly?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've all had the experience of going to like the UPS store or FedEx and shipping out a package. And even that is like, it's kind of a pain, right? And that it doesn't matter if it gets knocked around. It doesn't have to be kept in super cold storage. So one of the things in healthcare is all of that is very complex. It's also very regulated. If you lose some sneakers, they can ship you another pair. If you lose medicine in this supply chain, it's a big deal. And a lot of this, the clock starts ticking long before a provider ever writes a prescription. So that drug has to come from the manufacturer. It has to go to a distribution center. That distribution center has to manage all of that supply. Some of those products are governed by the DEA, and so everything gets a DEA number. And it takes a lot to get that medicine to you when you go to the drugstore to pick up your medication. And there are so many things that can go wrong. And so they were really focused on how do we make this a great experience and how do we help patients get the medication they need?
Yeah, when we look at the system, it's very complex supply chain to get the medicines and devices to patients. Why now the right moment for the industry to prioritize AI and data analytics?
Yeah, I mean, one way to think about it is behind every prescription is a supply chain that can't fail. So, some of the things that are happening right now is scale, complexity is exploding, and honestly, humans can't keep up. If I've got to pick up the phone, I've got to call the pharmacy, and the pharmacy's got to call the doctor. I've got to take a break. That takes 15 minutes. With technology and with AI, that can happen in seconds. And the demand is there. And in the rest of our lives, in our consumer lives, these things are happening in seconds. And so the demand is high. Also, the level of intimacy and consumer experience, the stakes are getting greater. People have it's healthcare is no longer just a B2B business. If you're a Medicare patient or if you're a Medicaid patient, you change at the end of every year and you can walk if you're not happy with either your provider or your payer. And so these competitive pressures continue escalating a lot. Now that overlap between affordability and AI's maturity, compute power is finally there, storage is finally there. Now we are developing this capability to meet, I think, where customers really want us to be. This is the moment that necessity and capability have come together and collided for the first time.
Right. In the mix, there are both business and technology leaders, right? How important is for them to understand the data side of healthcare operations?
The way I think about it is strategy without data is just a PowerPoint. Data has become so essential to everything that we do, and data literacy has just become business literacy. Information moving through your company, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in a retail, whether you're in banking, the lifeblood of your organization is data. And I tend to think of data as kind of the water supply. There's every town has a reservoir out on the side of the outskirts of town. And we don't think a lot about it until we one morning go and try to turn the shower on and there is no water. And then we suddenly are very concerned about the value chain of how the water gets to our house. So the same is true with data. Like there are a group of people that we have on the outskirts of the company that somehow keep all of this together. Data engineers are amazing folks, but they're underfunded and they're underappreciated also, because the reality is without the data engineers, there's no AI. Without the clean data, there is no AI. So I would say this is very similar to if you think about Coca-Cola. They're very concerned about the water supply because without water, there is no Coke. And I would say that it's very similar to if you think about data. If there's no clean data, there's no AI. It's that simple.
Right. The water analogy is very easy to understand and comprehend.
Gotta
So,
have data.
yes, of course. And given that big picture, let's look at what does it mean for executive priorities right now for large companies, any company for that matter, that large Fortune 500 companies. There's always a balance between a near-term ROI expectations and long-term strategic value of building AI capabilities. What are the top challenges executive faces when trying to connect AI strategy with operational healthcare?
Yeah, it's a great question. The data has such a longer lead time. So when you talk about like what are the risks, what is the return on the investment, what is my net present value, how long is this going to take to realize? The way I've described it to our executives in the past is if you want to build a house, like we can build houses really quickly. And that's like app development now. Like we have gotten really good at it. But often that's just slamming an application on top of a database that is made only for a prototype. That is not meant to be sustainable. If you want to go in and build a house, that's easy. If you want to build a city or even a neighborhood, you need significant planning ahead. And sometimes that's years ahead of time to wire the property, to lay the electricity, the plumbing. All of that has to happen before you even start talking about architecture for houses. And that's a long-term ROI. Builders that do that kind of work, they have a time horizon that is in the decades to get their full return on investment. And if you're a public company, it is very hard to figure out how to make that very long-term investment. And so it's up to us to figure out what are the wins that we can get along the way that are going to improve customer experience, what's going to help patients get the medication they need while building for this really long-term future. And it is very hard. There's that always that tension between ROI in the short term and building for the future. There's also another thing is there's a lot of confusion about who owns the data. Let's be honest, for decades, IT has run the show and they have handled the data. And now our data governance teams are saying like, oh, we need a data steward. We need you to help define these terms. We have discovered that they're different based on the application and the product. And this is a new skill set, right? And they're being asked to do this on top of their day job. The reality is that we already have these operational definitions, but we just have never written them down and we've never agreed to them. And so especially when you are a big company going through a lot of M&A, it's very important that when you bring these new companies on board, you quickly get aligned with, okay, what is drug volume? Oh, well, we define drug volume this way. The company we acquired defines it differently. So we need to align so that when we talk to our CEO or our customers about our drug volumes, like they're the same number, no matter which part of the business we're working on. That's very hard to do.
Yeah, that's a common denominator that we see across the platform. Whenever we talk to leaders, they always highlight technology is never a problem, but operationalizing is the real challenge, considering all these challenges. Like one day you mentioned M&A. Even without M&A itself is really challenging, especially companies like anybody in the pharmaceutical distribution. The amount of data they deal with, it's really challenging bringing those data together, right? Having that context, what are the top priorities you think leaders should have?
Yeah, I mean, every company, every business model is a little different. I can tell you for healthcare, there and specifically I tend to think about healthcare in terms of the patient journey, whether that is going to the doctor, whether it's going to get an MRI or a CT scan, or if you have to go to the emergency room, like, what is that experience like? Are you getting what you need? Is there a lot of friction in that system? So for most of the companies that I've worked for, time to therapy is really critical. Like from the time a provider writes a prescription or you get a referral to go to a specialist or to get an MRI or whatever it is, like what is the time? Like sometimes that referral can be 6 months away and people just don't do it. They're like, who can think about this thing 6 months from now? I need help right now. So faster access for patients. Healthcare is incredibly expensive. I think it's a really common reason that people file for bankruptcy. And so how can we lower costs? How can we really squeeze the inefficiencies out of the system so that we can pass those cost savings on to patients? It's really important. And especially like out of pocket, like the bill that you get even after your insurance is paid can be really shocking. The next piece is better experience. So what is your experience of the healthcare? Are you going to engage? Or is it a terrible experience and you're just going to like walk away and not live a healthier life? Don't get an annual checkup just because it's such a pain. That's definitely not what we want. I would say that executives don't lose sleep over AI specifically. They lose sleep over risk. They lose sleep over ROI. And whether patients are actually getting their therapy faster, they tend to see AI as a capability, not as a strategy in and of itself. And so how can we build this muscle, build this capability so that we can apply it to these business challenges?
Good. You highlighted how difficult it is to connect strategy with operational reality. That naturally brings us to the ground level view, the technical applications, right? One area you mentioned earlier was reducing the time to therapy, something where patient, doctors, payers, and pharma are all aligned. Unlike any other industry here, everybody have alignment to that one particular part of it. Everybody agree time to therapy need to be reduced. I love to hear how AI is being applied to make those real-world journeys smoother and faster, how AI help to remove that friction from the patient journey, especially in shortening the time to therapy from when a prescription is written and to when a patient begins the treatment.
Well, if you don't work in healthcare, this may be a shock, but healthcare still uses faxes quite a bit. And so we still receive faxes, doctors still send faxes. It is becoming less common, but it's still a thing. It's a little shocking to see it. And so imagine the time that it takes. Like you get a fax in, sometimes mostly it's typed, but it can be handwritten. OCR in the past was not great. It would get it like 70%. With AI, like we can actually read people's handwriting at like 90, 95% accuracy, which is pretty awesome. It means that there's not an army of people going and double checking those faxes. When we receive information from a health plan, they may approve a drug. They may say, no, this isn't the right drug. It's not on our formulary. They give us reasons for that. So that's a lot of prescriptions. If you think about 100% of all the prescriptions across America every day, every month, a lot of these companies have those reasons, and they're massive insights that would have been absolutely impossible. Even if you had an army to read those things in the past, you could never collate all that information. Well, now you can set AI loose using NLP to go through millions of documents to connect the dots. Okay, this patient is a patient we saw 3 years ago, and they were on this drug. They have this specific condition that wasn't in the notes that we received back from the doctor. The doctor may not even know. A lot of times we have more information than the health plan or the patient or the provider. Every time you move, you go to a different health plan, a different medical center, and they have their own EMR. Every time you change health plans, one company has Humana, another one has United. Different systems, they don't talk to one another very well, and people like to hang on to that data. So how do you, if you're in the middle of that system, how do you connect all of those systems together to really uncover one single patient journey, no matter what providers they're going to, no matter what payer is paying for it, no matter what pharmacies they pick up their prescriptions? How can you come up with one journey to understand, like, what is preventing this patient from getting the therapy they need to be healthy? And the next piece is, even after you go through all of that, sometimes patients just like, it's taken so long, I'm not even going to pick up my prescription, but I'm feeling a little bit better. I don't need those antibiotics, and they just don't go pick them up. And so there are a lot, I think it's like 30% of prescriptions are abandoned. So that's all of that. They've written it, insurance has agreed to pay for it. There may even be some affordability solutions kicked in from pharma to help you cover it, but it's still not picked up. And so that is a big chunk of people that are not getting the therapy they need. And so this is the kind of stuff that companies are obsessing about. How do we get adherence to medication? We've done all of this, and people are still not picking up their prescriptions. Well, there's probably a reason. There's pretty much like 100% correlation between costs and whether someone will pick up their drug. It's like a one. And the cheaper your drug, the more likely you are to pick up your prescription. And it's an amazing correlation. It's an interesting finding. And when you see it, you're like, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. So how can we reduce the cost of this prescription so that people can pick them up? And a lot of that time to therapy, integrating our systems. Even AI is even getting better at data engineering, generating unique keys across multiple data sets, taking a guess at this column in this other database and this column in this database. They look like they're similar. That's stuff that was all manual just 5 years ago. So we've come a long way. But I think the key takeaway is the AI doesn't live like in IT or in a lab. It is a part of the workflow. It's the way that you get work done today. And so how can we do that work that we have to do and that patients need better using AI?
Yeah, that's a shock to me when I hear 30% not picked up. I have instances I didn't pick up my medications, but I feel like I'm feeling better. Why should I take a medication? So, but that again, if we can make that correlation, so what's causing that and address that issue, and that would be amazing. So a lot of people get the care what they want. And Matthew, pharma leaders always talks about 5 Ps, right? Patients, providers, payers, pharmacies, and pharma. Each of them have their own priorities and constraints, like you just explained, how bringing all together. And when you look at that, how as a pharmaceutical distribution company, when they stitch this data together, what kind of insights they derive out of it? One of the things that you explained, how there's a correlation between the number of prescription not picked up and the cost versus prescription not picked up, right? Anything else that you see widely from this data insight? Because it's a trove of data.
Yeah, if you think about all of the different players, we call it healthcare, but they're really very different industries. You have a doctor that writes a prescription. That gets sent to a health plan for approval, which is an insurer, which is basically an army of actuaries trying to assess risk, which, if is approved, goes to a pharmacy, which has retail storefronts, has a whole nother set of concerns. The anchor is to get people into the store. Often, some of these drugstores are also payers themselves, so like Caremark and CVS, and so they walk this balance between helping patients get their medication and also trying to be competitive in pharmacy. Then you have the manufacturer that makes the drug. So, and then the patient that picks it up. So everyone is trying to help patients in their own unique way. There are places where they're very much at odds in what they're trying to achieve. But there are also places where, look, I've worked in almost all of these different areas. And the one thing they all agree on is like, let's get our patients healthy. Payers want to keep their patients out of the hospital. Payers don't want to pay for people to be in the hospital. Providers want their patients to be healthy. And so there is this great alignment in healthcare, trying to help patients do the right thing. And one of them is, we talked about adherence. So health plans, they have an army of people that call and say, hey, did you pick up your medication? I think a lot of some of the myths are that like payers don't want to pay for anything. They're happy to pay for your medication if it will keep you out of the hospital. And so this is where incentives are really aligned. But each of those players has slightly different things that they're concerned about. They're all public companies. They're all beholden to shareholders. And finding those areas where they align with patient needs that's pretty awesome. And you can find a lot of those.
Yeah, those are fascinating examples where AI can be applied. If you fast forward a bit, what does the horizon looks like? We're already seeing the AI support for radiology, for example, or doctors' note transcription and genomic analysis. If you look out for a few years, how do you see AI is reshaping the way we diagnose and think through patient care?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much opportunity. I think AI will shape real-time care. We haven't even begun to think about genomics. For those folks in genetics, there's not just genetics, there's epigenetics. We've barely scratched the surface of that. This is all stuff that AI is just excellent at taking huge, vast sums of data, trying to connect dots, trying to find correlations. In the end, AI, whatever you call it, it's all about predicting the future. It can be about predicting the next word in Gen AI, or it can be about predicting someone going to the hospital, someone developing diabetes, someone picking up their prescription. There are predictive models for all these things, right? And so AI is all about helping us not look back at the past and figure out like what could we have done differently, but to look into the future and think about how can we actually prevent this. This is for healthcare, this is the final frontier. It's how do we change behavior? We've been trying to do that for 100 years, very hard. But the first step is to understand where someone is heading and to do it in enough time that we can make a difference. So predicting those events that are going to happen. And some of these events, you would be shocked at how predictable some of these things are that to us, just as people, feel completely unpredictable. Like, oh, I have free will. I do what I want. I'm not going to get sick. But we do a really good job at predicting these things because they're really great feature sets that just have a lot of power to predict some of these things. So I think getting ahead of this, getting the right information to the right people at the right time. Today, a lot of the information comes too late. Like I was talking about, where you have to triangulate a prescription. A doctor writes a prescription for a patient goes to the pharmacy. You get to the pharmacy and the pharmacy's like, well, we've got to call your doctor. And you're like, I just talked to my doctor. Like AI, I hope, and I think, and I believe can get rid of a lot of this back and forth, and it can do it in seconds. Whereas today, that could take a week. We're not fast as humans. Like we've got lots of people to call. I've got 8 meetings today that I've got to run to also. So I'd say that the future is AI as a partner in care, not just an assistant to it. And it will help streamline a lot of things that are very slow or broken today.
Yeah, those are exciting possibilities. And what does that mean for leaders making decision now? And what advice do you have for CXOs trying to make a leap from strategy deck to real execution on the ground. This is the final part of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I don't treat strategy or AI like a strategy, treat it like a capability. And I think once every executive got their hands on ChatGPT for the first time, I mean, their mind was blown. And I think suddenly all of this started making sense. Like, wow, like this is powerful. It's at least as smart as a 5-year-old, which is like, we never thought that would happen. And so a lot of folks were like, how can we solve problems with AI? How can we do this? And so it was sort of a technology in search of use cases. So what are the use cases we can apply? So that was a few years ago. I'd say we've gotten a lot more sophisticated about it. And so what CEOs are thinking about now is let's pick real world problems that are causing pain for us, our shareholders, for our patients, and let's solve that one problem from end to end. Can we do it? Can we test it? We don't have to go to scale. Let's just experiment and see if we can actually do it. If we get some success, then let's continue investing and growing that possibility. And not every idea is going to work out. A lot of these ideas won't work and will fail. So it's also about fixing really unglamorous things. We tend to invest in like the shiny stuff that's very exciting. But that water reservoir on the edge of town, that's what supplies our drinking water to our families. It's an important thing. So we have to take care of it. We have to make sure it's not polluted. We've got to make sure it continues to get cleaned, that the right water scientists are taking a look at the chemical composition of that water. That is data governance and master data management and data stewardship. They don't get the limelight that they should. Those are all really critical to building this future we need with AI, and aligning incentives. An executive may have great incentives for pulling off AI, but if you're on the front line and you're like, this thing could replace me, like, what is my incentive? How do we unleash training programs to say like, okay, we may not want you to do this thing, but there is a new whole set of jobs that are going to be created. Someone has to manage this beast. So we can't just pull people off. AI doesn't kick itself off yet. So someone has got to press a button and it's got to do something. It doesn't wake up in the morning like we do thinking about what am I going to do today. It's very algorithmic and has to be told what to do. So a lot of leaders are thinking about how do we upskill our people? How do we get them to the next level? So aligning those incentives, making sure that people see what's in it for them into the future, and that they're not just like, okay, I'm giving away my own work. And I think I mentioned governance, very important, investing in technology, building a culture of trust that this isn't here to take away jobs. This is here to get us to the next level. It's exciting. If you're on an analytics team, this is very exciting because there's a ton of stuff that you do today that you don't want to do and that may not even feel valuable to you. And you would love to free up that time to be able to go do more valuable things, or like in healthcare, as we say, like working at the top of your license. Everyone would love that because there's more than enough work. It's, at least for as far as I can see, like AI is not going to replace all of that work. That would be nice, but I don't see it coming. So again, the best executives are not treating AI like a strategy. They're treating it like a capability to solve real world problems for their customers.
Wonderful. What really struck me is that AI has the power to cut through healthcare biggest pain points, like disconnected data, soiled priorities, and limited capacity. Whether it is giving doctors the first pass on diagnosis, or helping payers identify risk earlier, or allowing pharmacists to spot critical interactions, the value is tangible and immediate, but the adoption won't be easy. Leaders will need to focus on integration and interoperability, like what you mentioned. The real takeaway is AI can solve real problems today if we implement it with discipline and clarity of purpose. It was a fabulous conversation, Matthew. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience, and thank you for our listeners for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious and keep pushing the boundaries of what AI can achieve. Thank you.
Thanks, Samuel.
If you like today's podcast, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback is important. We always look for comments and recommendations to improve. This show is available on Apple Podcast, Google, and SoundCloud. Please do subscribe. Plus, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. You can find the links to these pages in the show notes or by visiting us at aisuccessfactors.com. We publish episodes bi-weekly on Wednesdays. Please be sure to tune in for the next episode. Thank you and see you next time.